We get
I
started,
think we could, yeah,
Sandra?
perfect.
Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to our fourth research discovery session for COMP. Um, Today we are presenting on emerging methods in radiotherapy dosimetry towards enhanced accuracy in dose measurement and calculations. We have three exciting speakers today. First, we have Sajjad Ahmad Khan. He is a PhD candidate out of the University of Laval, and his talk will be about design and characterization of a novel 2D dosimeter using long scintillation fibers for high resolution radiotherapy QA. Before we get into Sajjad's talk, we have some quick things to discuss. So for the agenda and housekeeping, so I'm going over the opening remarks right now. Then each presentation will be 15 minutes. And at 12:50, we'll be having the discussion session with the speakers. So this is when I will be asking you guys to hold off your questions. If you have any questions during the presentations, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A function. And then at 12:50, we will go over all these questions. So please do type in your questions since you might forget if you have a question for Sajjad and then you wait until the other two speakers. So if you have the question, put it in the chat and then we'll get to it after all the speakers have presented. And during the talks, please mute your mics. During the discussions, you can ask questions or share ideas with speakers. So as I said, just put it into the chat. And yeah, and during the academic year, we are having Comp Career Catalyst C3 seminar series bi-monthly. This RD session is also bi-monthly. We are posting leadership opportunities, so check out our website to learn more. This year, we're having the COMP annual scientific meeting. During this meeting, we have the Young Professional Workshop, the Canadian Residency Fair, the Science Spoken Succinctly, or S3, Student Night Out, and IDEA Student Travel Grant. So hopefully I'll see a bunch of you in Vancouver this year. And I think that's it. Yes, so if you scan this QR code here, you'll get a link on how to follow research discovery and COMP. And with that, I will stop sharing and Sajjad, you can start with your presentation.
Thank you so much, Arash. Let me just share my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. Just a second. Okay. So first of all, thanks for the COMP R&D discovery for giving me the opportunity to present between this crowd of young researchers and medical physics group. So today I will walk you through my project, which is a static multi-stack 2D scintillator dosimeter using scintillating fibers for radiotherapy QA. So the project, so before we start, I will walk you through a project on a new kind of detector, which is for radiotherapy quality assurance based on a plastic scintillating fibers. So there are two ideas I would like to leave with you with. First, that you can do a tomographic 2D dose verification without any moving parts using a fully static multi-stack detector. And second, that the same geometry is a natural stepping stone towards a quasi 3D dosimeter. So let me start with the clinical motivation first. So the clinical context first. So the modern external beam radiotherapy is dominated by techniques like IMRT and VMAT. These plans use rapid multi-leaf collimator motion and heavily modulated beam fluence to shape the dose tightly around the target, while sparing nearby organs at risk. So that conformality is a real clinical win. But it comes with a trade-offs. The same steep dose gradients that protect healthy tissue also make the delivery much more sensitive to small errors. A geometric shift of a couple of millimeters or a fluence deviation of a few percent can have a very different consequences depending on where it lands. So in a flat plateau region, it barely matters in a high gradient region. The same error can translate into a clinically significant dose discrepancy, either an underdose at the target or an overdose to a critical structure. So this is why pre-treatment 2D dose verification exists. It is a safety net between planning and delivery, and it is the reason every modulated plans gets measured on a phantom before first fraction. So the principle is well established. The problem is that the detector technology we rely on this verification has not really kept pace with the complexity of what we are trying to verify. And this is the gap we will look at the next slide. So actually, we have a lot of 2D detectors right now, but it's not like all of them doesn't tick every box. So let's look at what already in the clinic. So we have ion chamber arrays that are stable and give real-time readout, but their finite detector spacing limits spatial sampling, especially in steep dose gradients. We also have diode arrays that are fast and convenient, but several studies have shown they can be insensitive to a certain kind of IM MRT delivery errors. We have EPIDs that are appealing because they are already mounted on the LINAC, but they are not water equivalent. And turning the EPID signal into accurate dose requires complex calibration. We also have radiochromic film, which offers excellent spatial resolution and near water equivalence, but it cannot be read in real time. We often have to scan the radiochromic film, and we have to wait until 24 hours to read them. So no single existing detector ticks all the boxes. That's the gap which what motivates this work. The clinical so to overcome those gaps, we have plastic scintillating fibers, which is nearly the ideal MV dosimeter, and is a strong candidate to fill that gap. Beder's classic work in the early 90s established that the polystyrene scintillators are essential water equivalent in mega voltage beams with linear dose response and a very low energy dependence. Crucially, the signal is optical, which means it can be transported through fibers and read out in real time. On its own, a single fiber only measures a line integral of dose along its length, like an X-ray projection through a patient. But just as a CT scanner reconstructs a 2D slice from many X-ray projections, if we arrange a long scintillating fibers cleverly and treat each fiber as a projection, we can reconstruct a full 2D distribution tomographically. That's the foundation we are building on. Now, so if it's not that we don't have this kind of dosimeter, and I'm working on something new. Actually, we have those kind of dosimeters, but the main catch is the existing smart plastic scintillating dosimeter that exist needs rotation. So almost every scintillating fiber tomographic system that's been reported up to now uses a rotating acquisition. So if you are rotating it, it's not possible to have like real time doses, because if you depend on rotation, it will take time, right? And so we cannot actually have real time dose there. So what we are proposing is a static multi-stack geometry which doesn't need any rotation. So idea for the rotating stacks was, so you have a one stack of scintillating fibers, and you rotate it in different angles to to take to acquire data from different angles, and you use the data from those angles to reconstruct a 2D dose map. So, and the idea we are working on right now is we don't have to rotate it. So we can just, with just one beam of Linux, we can reconstruct a 2D dose. So three questions this works answer. So question one was, how aggressively can we reduce the number of projection angles before reconstruction quality breaks down? If we can get away with fewer projection, the detector can be simpler. This is because if you have so many stacks together, the number of fibers can increase drastically. So the real challenge is to reduce the number of stacks and to reduce the number of fibers. The second question is the central of question of the paper. Can a fully static multi-stat stack detector match the accuracy of a conventional rotating acquisition? And the third question is, since the stacks sit on a different depths in a phantom, what correction are needed to compensate for depth-dependent attenuation and beam divergence? As we know, if the stacks are placed below each other, the beam diverges, and same time the beam attenuates. So we also have to take into account those two important factors. So first, I would also like to mention here, the work I did up till now is purely simulation work. I haven't started the experimental work yet. So I use Topaz for the simulation, and this is the framework I used. So I used 6 MV beam and of water phantom geometry, statistics of 10 to the power 11 histories. And for the plastic scintillating fiber, I used the polystyrene, the cladding of PMMA, and we are scoring those two material here. And that's it for. And one more thing I would like to add, or which I will later add it in the later slides. So this is the simulation setup basically, which I have of my 10 stack of experimental setup. So I will also tell you how I came with this 10 stacks. Excuse me. So you can see here there are 10 stacks present, and I have just tried to zoom into I have tried to I have to try to zoom into this first one stack. This stack has like 81 fibers, and the fiber pitch is around 1.5 mm, 1.5 mm, and you can see each stack is placed at a different angles. Like the first stack is placed at 0, 20, the second is 20, the third is 40, and similarly the last stack is at 180 degrees. Also, you can see the depth, which is 0, 2 centimeter, and so on until like it's 18 centimeter at the bottom. And the first stack is placed at the Dmax. So yes, uh, and so this is the experiment. I'm using 6 MV photon beam. So this is and also the fiber diameter is 1 mm. Okay, first of all, also I'd like to add that I also for the reference I also used simulation. I didn't do any experimental work for the reference also. So what I did, I just scored a thin water plane at the Dmax of by those two water. And yeah, so two physical correction that because the stacks are at different depths, two depths dependent effects mix into the data and would corrupt the reconstruction if we ignore them. The first is attenuation. The 6 MV beam loses intensity as it traverses water, so a fiber at 18 centimeter depth records much less signal than one at Dmax, even if the field is identical. We compensate it by scaling each stack signal by a ratio of percent tip dose at its depth to PDD at Dmax. The PDD curves come from our same Topaz simulation, so the correction is fully self-consistent. The second effect is geometric. Because the beam diverges, the same physical field becomes wider at greater depth. If we keep the fiber pitch constant in every stack, deeper stacks undersample the magnified field. We fix this by scaling pitch with magnification factor. The top stack stays at 1.5 mm pitch, and the deepest stack ends up at 1.83 mm. So as I have said, you can see in the previous image that the last stack is bigger than the first stack. This is because I have increased the pitch of the fiber placing in the last stacks to compensate for the beam divergence. So the first stack, the pitch is 1.5 mm, but as we go down, the pitch increases, and for the last stack, the pitch is 1.83 mm. Now let's see the go through the results. So the first question was whether we can get away with a fewer projection. So we tested this with H-shaped field. Again, this reconstruction is I have acquired through rotation. So I didn't acquire this with our static detector, static model. This is with I just use one stack of scintillating fibers, and I rotated it with for now first for 19 angles and then for 10 angles, just to so that we can have understanding of how less we can go for as we're talking about the number of stacks. So first image on the left is the reference, which was obtained using scoring dose to water at a thin layer of water quantum at Dmax. The simulation on the left, we have two reconstruction of the H field, one using 19 projection at 10 degree spacing. So we are going from 0 to 180 degrees. So first stack should be first data should be for 0, the second data will be 10, the third will be 20. And for the the third image on this slide is using 10 projection at a 20 degree spacing. The second image is of 20 degree spacing. So the bottom row shows the central horizon. So quantitatively going from 19 to 10 angle increases the mean absolute error from 0.013 to 0.018 and drops the gamma pass rate from 98.3% to 95%. So the 19 angle case is better than expected, but 95% gamma is still very strong agreement. The really clean result is that the 50% F50 is identical at 69.86 millimeter in both cases. So even with the half the projection, the field geometry is preserved. 10 projection is good compromise between accuracy and acquisition simplicity. Now this is this is the headline result actually. This is the reconstruction we have achieved in simulation with a static detector. The same H-shape field reconstructed from the 10 fixed stacks at increasing depth with no rotation at all. So this doesn't have any rotation. In the middle, the comparison of a horizontal profile at the center of the field where you have a flat plateau and a y equals 30 millimeters, where the H gives you two distinct lobes. So the static reconstruction follow the reference very closely. The off-axis double peak structure is recovered. The plateau height is right. The field edges are sharp. The numbers for the gamma pass rate, we have 93.1% at 3% of 3% by 3 mm gamma rate gamma analysis. The MAE is 0.17 and RMSE is 0.022. And the F50 build again is exactly 69.86 millimeters. So almost the same as the Monte Carlo reference. So we gave up a couple of points for gamma compared to rotating 10 angle case from 95 to 93%. But we eliminate every moving part. For a routine clinical QA, that's a very favorable trade. Now talking about the corrections and that are essential. So on the left, the three evaluation test all on the same H field. So first we have no PDD correction at all. So the H is still recognizable, but the background is elevated. The distribution is non-uniform and gamma collapses from 93 to 62.6%. So first is when we didn't apply any PDD correction. We just used the raw data. But with a PDD curve from a different beam energy, maybe surprisingly, this is even worse than no correction at all. gamma drops to 32% when we use a wrong PDD curve. Suppose I used a PDD curve of like say to 7 MB, 9 MB beam or any other beam, then the reconstruction, the gamma pass rate for that reconstruction is even less than with no PDD correction, which is 32%. Also with no pitch scaling, the PDD has to match the beam the PDD correction but pitch scaling of every stack uses 1.5 mm pitch. The field gets visibly inflated. F50 jumps from 69 to 86 to almost 76 mm, and the gamma drops to 38.6%. So you can notice here with a no pitch scaling that your F50 is increased, the field size is increased from 69.86 to 75.94 mm. So both correction are essential and they have to be physically meaningful, not like numerical fudges. So it's the one thing to reconstruct a clean edge. Clinical fields are really that tidy. So we tested that static detector on a deliberately complex, irregular field with asymmetric boundaries, concave features, and multiple high gradient regions. This is the kind of pattern you'd see in a heavily modulated treatment plan. On the left, the SIUT TV construction. On the right, the topos reference. So the reconstruction captures the main morphology, including asymmetry and concave bottom edge feature. Quantitatively talking, we have a good gamma pass rate, which is 94.6%, ME is 0.21, and RMSE is 0.028. And again, the F50 matches the reference exactly as 65.31 millimeters. Crucially, we did not retune anything between the H and this field. Same correction, same reconstruction parameter. The framework generalizes. So this is important because we don't have to change the parameters if we are changing the field size. This was one of the important findings of this work, is that for each reconstruction, we didn't have to change the parameters. With the same parameters, we can construct different shapes. So this is the part of the work that I'm most excited about and where I think it's heading next. The detector we just described already contains depth information. Each of the 10 stacks lives at a different known depth, and each one independently measures those at its own plane, spanning the build-up region, Dmax, and fall-off region. Right now, we treat the depth structure as a problem, right? We are for the depth we are using PDD to correct it. Then for being but for what that's not it. We it's not a problem actually. So PDD scaling and divergence scaling are applied so that we can collapse the stack back onto single 2D plane at Dmax. But the depth axis isn't a nuisance; it's data. The reframing is to stop collapsing the stacks and instead use them as a direct samples of 3D dose volume. On the reconstruction side, there are two reasonable paths. The simpler one, path A, is to do an independent 2D reconstruction at each depth and then stitch the slices into volumetric dose map. That's a small extension of the current pipeline and would already give a depth resolved measurement. Path B is more ambitious, a unified 3D iterative inversion where every stack contributes a joint reconstruction, exploiting the fact that adjacent stacks see physically continuous dose. And third of all this comes from the same hardware that already gives us static 2D reconstruction, no new detector, no new acquisition, the 10 stacks are already there. So three things to wrap up this presentation. Three messages. First, sparse view tomographic really does work for 2D dose reconstruction. With just 10 projection, we get over a 23% gamma agreement on a non-trivial H field and a complex irregular field. Second, the most importantly, a fully static multi-stack detector can match what but rotating system gives you. We get the same F50 comparable MA and RMSE, all the structural features with no moving parts. Third, the correction matter. PDD-based attenuation correction and divergence aware pitch scaling are non-optional refinements. Skipping either one breaks the reconstruction, and the PDD has to come from the actual beam quality. Looking ahead, the next steps are to build physical prototype, validate on a clinical LINAC under 6 MV radiation. Like this is, as I've already told type. So honestly, it's a mess actually because there.
I think Sajjad cut out for me.
Yeah, for me as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe he can talk about his
I'm happy
future
to.
plans. Oh, sorry, you cut out Sajjad.
Sorry?
You cut out your last minute. We didn't hear it.
Oh, the last minute. From where actually? Can you?
You were talking about your building the physical prototype.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So sorry. Sorry for that. So actually, right now I'm working on the physical prototype of actual for the actual experimental setup. So it's a kind of mess right now because it almost involves 800 building and 800 fiber stacks. So each stacks had 81 fibers. So you can imagine there is a lot of fibers involved, which is a bit complex. But I hope when it is ready, it would be easy to operate it. So wish me luck for that. And so, yeah, thank you. And I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you so much, Sajjad. We will be keeping, I believe, questions for the end. So at the end of the three talks, we'll have a Q&A session. If anyone has questions, and as I see some people are doing it, like please note them in the chat, and then you can also ask extra questions at the end. Thank you for a great talk, Sajjad.
Thank you so much again.
Our next speaker will be 𝐤𝒚𝒈𝒊𝒏𝒈. I hope I didn't massacre your name, who is a medical physicist at SIUT Hospital Karachi, and he will be presenting his talk, an introduction to 𝐼CRP-145 computational phantoms in GN4 and their applications, a Monte Carlo QA study of dose perturbations from metallic prosthesis. So I'll let you share your screens, Zain, please.
Can you please confirm it for me? Is the screen
That looks
visible to
good.
you? Okay.
Perfect.
Am I audible to everyone? Okay. So, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss a little bit about the ICRP-145 computational phantom. So my name is Zainul Abidin, and I'm currently working as a medical physicist at SIUT Hospital Karachi. I have done my MS in medical physics from 𝒂𝒆𝒓𝒂𝒑𝒚 Islamabad, and today I will be giving a talk on the ICRP-145 computational phantoms in the GN4 and a Monte Carlo QA study for dose perturbation from metallic processes. So basically, this study combines advanced computational human phantom with the Monte Carlo simulation techniques to investigate how metallic implants, specifically the TMJ implants, that is the temporomandibular joint implants, affect radiation dose distribution. So, moving forward, before proceeding, I would like to briefly acknowledge that some figures and illustrations used in this presentation are sourced from published literature and educational resources. These materials are properly credited and are used strictly for academic and educational purposes. However, all simulation work, analysis, and results are presented here are original. These slides are not to be reproduced, cited in thesis, are used in research publication without proper attribution, and where applicable, permission from the original rights holders. Objectives. So this study is designed around one central question. Do metallic TMJ implants significantly affect the radiation dose distribution? To address this, we first understand the structure and features of the ICRP-145 human computational phantom or mesh type reference computational phantom. Identify the phantom variants, variable variants in the ICRP and their intended use cases. to explore the integration of the 𝐼CRP-145 phantom with the giant for Monte Carlo framework, and then to investigate the dosimetric perturbations introduced via TMJ implant using a giant for and the ICRP computation phantom. Starting from the ICRP 145 phantom. So basically, what is ICRP? So this phantom was introduced by the ICRP task group 103, and it presents the adult mesh type reference computational phantom for both male and female. Uh, these phantom represent a significant advancement over the earlier voxel-based phantom. So the main limitation of the voxel phantom, that is why the reason that we need the ICRP 145 phantom is they have the limitation in resolving small structures like the lens of the eye and thin tissue layers like stomach wall, mucosa. Now, MRCP overcome these limitations by using a polygon tetrahedral mesh geometry using voxelization. So that is actually a bit advanced, and it has a bit precise geometry and organ orientation and its anatomical precision. Uh, some of the applications are here. So these phantoms are highly versatile in their applications. They include all major source and target organs required for the effective dose calculation. And they can represent micrometer thick tissue layer in various systems such as the respiratory and alimentary tracts. So additionally, they can be applied to represent different body sizes and posture as well, making them highly realistic for dosimetric studies, whether it is from the radiation protection point of view. Even one advantage is to study it for the internal exposure, for the external exposure as well. So beyond adult model, mesh phantom that there are from the pediatric mesh reference computational phantoms. This is starting from the newborn male female to the 15 years male female. And similarly, the pregnant female referenced computational phantoms are also have. So it is from the 8-week male fetal phantom till the 38-week maternal phantom. So these are phantoms. Some of them are available for the dosimetric purposes, while other are in the in the development phases, and they are not openly available. We can even calculate the CT doses. Even we can use it for multiple purposes. Uh, After that, the ICRP body size and weight dependent mesh type reference computational phantoms. All these phantoms can be accessed with the link that is meshphantom.com. On that website, you can access that. So, going further, coming toward the case study. So we what actually we did, we just designed this phantom for our purpose, that just to check whether we can get our desired output from that phantom or not. It is the first approach that we did. What actually we are trying to solve is that to establish the computational framework. Uh, to investigate the dose perturbation introduced by the or caused by the metallic TMJ implants. In this work, we simulate the presence of a TMJ implant within the ICRP 145 human phantom and evaluate how it affects radiation dose distribution under realistic treatment conditions. So this is a general sketch of the implant, the mandibular implant, and that is right there. Before going forward, just for a physicist, the anatomy of the TMJ joint, like the temporomandibular joint, is a synovial joint. It is a synovial joint that connects the mandibular part or the mandible to the temporal bone of the skull. It consists of structures like condyle, like the glenoid fossa, and the articular disc supported by the surrounding ligaments and muscles. Clinically, this region is important because it lies close proximity to several critical structures like lens, cataract of the eye, including part of the brains and the posterior lymph nodes. So it is actually an important area, and this implant can cause dose perturbations. which we will be studying later. What are the indications basically? Why it is required in cases of several joint diseases like some in-state TMJ diseases with severe pain and dysfunction. Advanced osteoarthritis can lead us to the TMJ processes, and ankylosis, severe traumatic injuries to the joint can also lead us to the TMJ implant. A recent study has been published by the British Journal of the Maxillofacial Surgeons. Actually, they modify the categories that what kind of implant needed for the patient or for specific anatomy. So, based on those categories, there are different categories that depends on the injury on and patient anatomy according to that study published. The British Journal on Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons has published their study. So we choose for this study for the standard category. The standard category is composed of the F naught and M naught. So what basically that means that according to them, the F naught is the standard fossa component that is contained within the fossa, while the M naught is the standard condyle ramus component that is proximal to the angle of the mandible. While the other FA and FT, these two are like, if we clearly see them, the FA and the FT, the FA is the extended fossa component extending into the site of the zygomatic arc, while the FT is the extended fossa component extending to cover a deficit in the temporal bone. So there are two differences. While the mandible component is further divided into four parts, that is extended proximal to the ipsilateral mental foramen, extended proximal to contralateral mental foramen, and similarly to like alloplastic mandible, including both condyles. Uh, Going further, what we did, actually, the works has been started from there. Initially, we construct and model the standard metallic implant on the mandible and some part on the fossa condyle using the J and for detector construction method and detector construction class. So the standard implant has basically two parts, as discussed earlier, the fossa condyle part and the mandibular component. To connect these two, we need some kind of light molecular polyethylene, for example, where polyethylene that is available on the NEST library. We use that component. All these materials and density are taken from the NEST library. To give more realistic picture to the scenario and to the experiment, we also model a dummy tumor. The dummy tumor has been inserted just like posterior to the implant to score the dose record, to record the dose and to the energy deposited there. That how much dose perturbation occur within the tumor. If, for example, if a patient came after the surgery of the TMJ implant and it has been introduced with the TMJ implant, and later on, if, for example, if that patient is diagnosed with a tumor, so what changes and what are the perturbations we will be observing there? Uh, these are some like computational work here. I would not mention the detailed detector construction and the run action files, etc. So a basic introduction here is we use the physics option 3 for this study. And we use gamma particles, and the source is chosen as an isotropic source. But apart from that, the source has been designed from the histogram generated a 6 MV beam. And initially, we studied it for the 5x5 field sizes. And then later on, using the GPS command, we increase it to the 10 cross 10, 15 cross 15, and 20 cross 20 centimeter square. Going further, as we inserted a tumor into the patient anatomy and to the patient head, so that tumor must be a dose recorder or an energy recorder. So we can tell about it that that much dose has been and energy has been recorded in that tumor. So for that purpose, we use a scoring mesh detector. And then for the energy deposition, that energy has been recorded. 10 raised to power 9 primary particle has been generated for a single study. and the result has been saved later. So this is basically the simulation scenario after applying the beam cone beam. So we construct a TMJ implant model and insert it into the 𝐼CRP1 phantom within the GN4 simulation environment. This simulation was performed using a 6 MV photon beam, which is commonly used in clinical radiotherapy. We investigated multiple field sizes ranging from 5 cross 5 to 20 cross 20 centimeters square. So two implant materials like were considered titanium and stainless steel. The reason behind this why titanium and why stainless steel is there are many major manufacturers of these implants using titanium and stainless steel. So both of which are commonly used in clinical practices. The primary quantity recorded in the simulation was deposited energy, which was then used to calculate absorbed dose in different regions of interest. Importantly, we isolate the effect of the implant by comparing simulation with and without the implant under identical conditions. So this allows us to directly quantify the dose perturbation introduced by these implants. For the next step, what we did is just to compare their PDDs. We take another example within the GN4, that is the medical clinic example, simulating the same environment and the same phantom. Sorry, but this time we use a water phantom for that to analyze their PDD curves, a percent depth dose curves. So for that, we actually started from the 5 cross 5 field size using the same cone beam and then model it with and without implant for different field sizes. And then the results are being compared. So in the dosimetry analysis, areas of interest were marked out. They comprise the tissue adjacent to the implant as well as primary head and neck areas that could be affected by the secondary radiation. An anatomical set of regions based on the organ shapes from the 𝐼CRP computational phantoms were marked. So these structures were identified as like the pituitary gland, left salivary glands, right salivary glands, and teeth, tooth retention, tongue, liver, tonsils, oral mucosa, some sensitive part, as I've discussed earlier, that the sensitive left eye sensitive part, insensitive part. And these are all organs and tissues has been studied for all in all four field sizes and for different materials like stainless steel and titanium. This is a sample dose, like a simple output of the chart for simulation. Once the simulation run, this is was the output we get from that simulation. So the data structure has been systematically organized. Like if we see that the comprehensive evaluation and includes the following parameters for each anatomical structure, like organ identification number, organ name, organ density. So actually, these all organ IDs and organ names are in reference with the 𝐼CRP manual 145 manual. So these are all being taken from that. Absorbed dose with without implants and the relative error between them, the standardized format allow for direct assessment of implant induced dosimetric variation and their clinical significance across different tissue and anatomical regions. So I won't go in detail in the results section, just to give an idea that in all these graphs along the x-axis there are like regions. For example, if I'm talking about the oral mucosa and the mandible region, so on the x-axis a single organ has been pointed out like tongue, mouth, floor, lips, cheeks, cortical and spongiosa. While on the y-axis there is a percentage depth dose that has been found from the simulation output. Similarly, all analysis has been done for all organs and for all four field sizes. To just to give an idea, I will explain a single graph in between. For example, if we see the oral mucosa and the mandible region, there is a cortical and spongiosa part, that is the bony part, while the other two is the tongue and the mouth floor is basically a soft tissue part. So it means that for a 5 cross 5 field size, a field size is small, like in comparison to the 20 cross 20 centimeter. For a small field size, it's mostly photons blocked by the metallic implant, and a little bit of photons just goes in the implant and further proceed. But when they interact with the bony tissue, the dose perturbation has been enhanced. like less photon has been read there. While we see the soft tissue area, so there was not significant enhancement or decrementation has been observed there. So it actually gives us three ideas that single photon or a beam of photon depends here on three things. On it depends on three things. The first one is the anatomical site, the radiation field size, and the composition of the tissue. I discussed the composition of the tissue for the radiation field size. As the field size is small, it means that the lateral penumbral effect won't contribute that much. But as the field size increasing for example, for 10 cross 10 field size, so those decrementation has been compensated by the lateral penumbral effect. The lateral scattering contributed there, and that has been compensated. So no significant dose perturbation has been observed for 10 cross 10 field sizes all in significant organs. Moving further, so that has tumor has been inserted. So for the dose differences between the titanium and the stainless steel implant in tumor tissue that is manually implanted varies with the field size as seen in the figure. So for the titanium implant, the radiation dose is about 1.3% lower at the smallest field size, that is 5 cross 5 centimeter. With the increase in field size to 10 cross 10 centimeter, this effect decreases to near zero and becomes slightly positive at 15 cross 15 field sizes. So that enhancement has been observed because that the lateral scattering effect has been significant in comparison to the dose or the beam blockage by the implant. At larger field sizes, both material respond similarly with a dose difference of approximately 0.2%. Stainless steel implant exhibit minor changes in dose from 0.1% to 0.2% for all field sizes. And the PDD analysis has also been confirmed that significant dose enhancement or reduction has not been observed. So what further can we do? So there is a study that is the impact of metal implants on the dose and clinical outcome of radiotherapy. This is a review article that has been published, and this figure has also been taken from their study. It shows a lot of it like a spinal fixation, a hip implant, internal metallic port, temporary bone fixation. So these are all implants that can be studied for for research, for educational purpose, even for clinical purposes. A dental implant, several studies has been performed earlier, but using ICRP-145 Phantom, it can be done on that as well. On conclusion, so titanium implants demonstrate field size dependent dose perturbation, that is minus 1.3% at 5 cross 5 field size, while stainless steel maintain more consistent dosimetry within plus minus 0.2%. For larger field sizes, dose reduction is compensated by the lateral scattering, that is the penumbral effect. Bony tissue shows enhanced dose reduction, that is as I've shown you in the cortical and the spongiosal region. The statistical analysis has also been performed for these studies. A PDT curve with variation of 1 to 2% confirmed the dose perturbation for all three cases in 10 cross 10 centimeter field size. Critical structures like brain, spinal cord, lymph nodes, endocrine glands exhibit negligible dosimetric effect. The reason behind this is, like for example, if we talking about the brain, so the mass and the size of the brain is comparatively large. So the overall effect there is negligible, and some organs or tissues are just far away from the metallic implant, so significant effect has not been observed. Several acknowledgements. Finally, I would like to acknowledge my mentors and my collaborator who support this work. Thank you very much. Sorry, so some of references, if someone find it useful and interested, so they can use further references for this study as well. And thank you. So any question, please?
Thank you for this great talk. Very, very informative. I'll remind everyone to hold their questions till the end of all three presentations, please. And feel free to write them in the chat directly now if you would rather. So thank you again, Zain, for an amazing talk. And we will be finishing with our last speaker, Gabrielle Lee, who will be presenting her talk, Evaluation of an Optimized Fricke-Xelenol Orange Gel for 3D Dose Verification Using MRI. She is a PhD candidate at the University of Calgary. So you can go ahead, Gabrielle.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So, hello everyone. Today I'll be presenting my work on 𝒂𝒈 orange gel dosimetry and discussing the motivation behind my current research project. So today I'll begin my talk with a brief introduction to gel dosimetry, specifically 𝒂𝒈 orange gel dosimetry, followed by a discussion of its historical development, which provides the motivation for my project. I will then conclude by presenting my results. Gel dosimetry is a 3D radiation dosimetry technique that uses tissue-equivalent gels to record dose distribution. When irradiated, the gels undergo chemical changes to provide a 3D volumetric representation of the dose distribution with high spatial resolution, and it can be read out using an imaging modality depending on the type of the gel used. And there are three main types of gel dosimeters. We have फ़RKI, polymer, and radiochromic. So a typical gel dosimetry workflow involves fabricating the gel using a recipe, followed by irradiation. In the readout step, radiation-induced chemical changes are imaged using an imaging modality such as optical CT, MRI, or X-ray CT, depending on the type of the gel used. And then dose calibration is performed by correlating the measured signal with known doses to generate a dose response curve, which allows for quantitative analysis, such as determining the dose sensitivity of the gel. Finally, the measured dose distribution can be directly compared to the planned dose distribution, allowing assessment of how accurately the treatment was delivered. So while modern treatment planning systems can calculate 3D dose distribution with high precision, true 3D volumetric dose verification remains a significant gap in clinical practice. And this is where gel dosimetry comes in. And I just want to make clear that gel dosimetry is not intended to replace current QA tools, but rather to complement existing methods by enabling true 3D end-to-end verification, where the entire treatment workflow can be validated in 3D. And it can also be used for adaptive radiation therapy, where motion and daily anatomical changes make QA more complex, as well as during commissioning, where high-resolution validation is needed when introducing new techniques, technologies, or treatment systems. So my research focuses on 𝒂𝒈 orange gel dosimeters, which consists of 5 main ingredients. It is mainly composed of water and gelatin, forming the gel matrix, and of active chemicals like sulfuric acid, ferrous ammonium sulfate, and xylenol orange. When exposed to radiation, the ferrous ions in the gel are oxidized to ferric ions, and this change in concentration is quantifiable using the MRI. Xylenol orange was originally added in as a chelating agent to form a stable complex with ferric ions to slow down the diffusion and improve temporal stability. And it turns out that it also enables optical readout by changing color from orange to purple upon irradiation. So then what does that tell us? That tells us that 𝒂𝒈 gels can be read out using 2 imaging modalities, one by optical CT and the other by MRI. Optical CT uses a 590 nanometer light source to measure optical attenuation, which arises from that visible color change from orange to purple after irradiation. MRI measures R1 relaxation rate that's influenced by the concentration of radiation-induced ferric ions. And then the images below show an example of an optical attenuation map and an R1 map, which were acquired from their respective modalities. So now we're going to take a little quick detour through the history of FXO gel dosimetry. 𝒂𝒈 dosimetry was first developed in 1984, so it's actually been around for quite a while, and MRI was the primary readout method. But at the time, MR scanners were not nearly as accessible as they are today. And lower performance coil technology resulted in like lower sensitivity and longer scan times. So then came the introduction of xylanol orange, which enabled optical readout and made optical CT a compelling alternative. So because of this, FXO gel dosimetry became heavily optimized for optical CT over the years, leading to a well-established optical CT gel formulations. But now, with the rapid growth of MR-guided radiation therapy, the increasing adoption of MR-Linac systems, there has been renewed interest in bringing MR-based FXO gel dosimetry back into the spotlight. However, unlike optical CT, where there is like a well-established FXO gel formulation, MRI optimized formulations remain much less established. So that serves as the main motivation behind my project. So based on this, the goal of my project is to optimize FXO gel formulations that are suitable for both MRI and optical readout, allowing direct comparison between the two modalities. And I will also be evaluating whether MR-based readout can achieve equivalent 3D dose verification performance. So then how did I go about optimizing this gel formulation? I began by systematically varying the concentration of the key ingredients within the FXO gel recipe, as shown in this table below here. So a combination of all these concentrations resulted in about 30 different formulations being investigated. But simply creating different formulations is not enough. We also need to determine which formulation actually performs the best. So in order to do this, we evaluated several important gel characteristics, including dose sensitivity, dose and energy dependence, linear dose range, reproducibility, and diffusion. Among these characteristics, two of the most important were the dose sensitivity and diffusion. Dose sensitivity describes how strongly the gel responds to radiation, while diffusion describes how much the radiation-induced signal spreads over time after radiation, which can reduce spatial accuracy. And I'll come back to these two characteristics later and show how they were integrated into the optimization process to determine the optimal gel formulations for both imaging modalities. So the first step was to determine the dose sensitivity of the 30 FXO gel formulation. So shown here is an example of a dose response plot for 15 formulations that contain sulfuric acid of 100 millimolar concentration. And as you can see, the dose sensitivity varies depending on the FAS and XO concentration, which indicates that the formulation of the composition has a significant impact on the gel's response. And because the formulations that were experimentally evaluated were only at discrete concentration, a regression model was developed to generate a continuous parameter space for the optimization process. And then finally, in order to determine the optimal formulation, we developed an objective function that incorporated both dose sensitivity and a diffusion penalty term, since those two were the most important characteristics affecting the gel performance. So here we have a normalized MRI and optical CT dose sensitivity, which were weighted together, while diffusion was included as a penalty term to discourage formulations with like excessive signal spreading after irradiation. So using this approach, we identified the optimal formulation shown in the table on the right here. Now that we've determined the optimal concentration, I then fabricated FXO gel using this recipe and performed an end-to-end 3D dose verification study using a liver SBRT treatment plan to evaluate whether the MR-based readout could achieve performance comparable to optical CT. And overall, here, the results showed very good agreement with the measured gel and the planned dose distribution. As you can see here in the treatment planning system calculated the planned dose planned dose be 3.22. And MR was the measured volume inside the mean dose inside the 95% isodose line was 3.13, leading to a percent difference of 2.84%. And for optical CT measured gel volume, it was 3.16, leading to a percent difference of 1.93%. And a gamma analysis was also performed, and you could add 2% 2 millimeter criteria, and you can see that they both passed with a pass rate of 95% or higher. And we had the same results for the 100 millimolar recipe for the MR-based measured gel volume. It was actually interesting to see that the 100 millimolar formulation didn't perform quite as well as we expected for using the optical CT readout. And this has been a systematic dose discrepancy that we've been noticing of approximately 0.5 gray throughout the entire gel volume. And we are currently actively investigating this issue and exploring methods such as like gel priming to improve this optical CT response. But this detail I will not go into for this presentation, as the primary focus of this talk is on the MR-based readout. But in overall, we were able to show that the MR-based results demonstrated strong consistency and reproducibility. So in summary, this work demonstrated that MR-based FXO gel dosimetry can achieve 3D dose verification comparable to optical CT, while also highlighting the potential of MRI as a practical readout modality for future 3D quality assurance applications. So yeah, that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gabrielle, for this great presentation and for presenting your work. So we can proceed to the Q&A session now for all of our speakers. Arash, do you want to share again maybe the PowerPoint, or I can do it just for the end?
Sure, I can share it.
We can just have like the speaker names.
You guys see it?
I think it's coming up. Yeah, cool.
Let's go.
So, yes. I would proceed with people having live questions first, and then we can read the questions in the chat and do a little bit of back and forth, if that works. So I would welcome anyone who has questions for one of our speakers to either raise their hand or write down the question in the chat. Otherwise, I'll start by reading those that are already there. Okay, let's start with Finn Dotchin's question that I believe was for the first talk. So he says, for your prototype, do you plan to increase the pitch between different layers, or will you instead correct for it during dose reconstruction?
Hello. So thanks, Finn, for your question. So let me just see if I can understand your question. So you're asking if I plan to increase the pitch between different layers, or will you instead correct for it during dose reconstruction? Actually, so as you said, I will be making the prototype with increased pitch, because that's much easier than correcting it with during the dose reconstruction. So yeah, so right now I'm already working on it, and I already have the stacks with me, and I have increased the pitch accordingly as we increase the number, as we go down the stacks. Yeah. So I think that answers your question. I hope.
Yes, so he says yes. Thank you very much, Sajjad. Then we had a question from Luis Aguiles Pedros for Gabrielle, I believe. So he says, usually फ़RCK gel dosimetry is based on T2R2 measurements, since these are generally faster and sensitivity can be improved through scan averaging. Is there a particular reason why you chose R1 instead of R2? Have you compared both methods in terms of sensibility, reproducibility, or dose response performance? So,
Yeah. So there are a couple of reasons. First of all is of the pulse sequence that we're using. So because we wanted to do a 3D dose verification, we're using a pulse sequence that's called MP2RAGE, and this is like a T1 map based. So that was a reason why. And it's also because R2 measurements are also like sensitive to like susceptibility effects and like field inhomogeneity. And so and we noticed a lot more like a lower like signal to noise ratio because the T2 decays a lot faster compared to T1. So just due to those reasons, we just decided to read out our R1 or use our R1 values that's given off from the Fricky gel instead of the R2.
thank you, Gabrielle, and thank you, Louise, for your question. Do you have any more questions for our speakers? If you would rather not speak up, it's really fine to write in the chat. I'll leave just a little bit of time for people to think. Yes, we have a question from Finn.
Yeah, sorry. If and no one else has a question, I maybe would have a follow-up to my question for Sajad. So yeah, it was a very interesting talk. Thank you. But so I was just wondering, so if you are increasing the pitch, physically within the layers, the stacks, then does that not restrict you to only it's specific to the beam that you're measuring because you're uh you know what I mean? Because the widening of your beam would be specific to the 6MV with a certain SAD and your setup.
I'm not sure I understand your question, but I think you're asking like if the beam is diverging, will my
Yeah, right. The beam divergence will depend on the quality that you're measuring, right?
yes.
And so if you physically implement it in your prototype, then your prototype will be specific to, say, a 6MV beam rather than
Oh
being
yeah,
able to use it in a 18MV or and other qualities and maybe at different setup distances.
so that actually is so I can change. So as you have heard, like while I was speaking, that I have two correction actually. One is the PDD and the other is the increasing the pitch, right? So the PDD I can change for different beams, but for the divergence, I don't think like for different. I'm not sure actually, but I don't also think that for different MV beams the divergence would be different for like say suppose a 6MV or for 9MV the divergence would be different. I think divergence follows the same formula, which is 1 by r square. So I don't think it will matter for different beams. But yeah,
Right.
for the attenuation, yes, I will be using different PDD for the respective beam energy beam I'm using.
You expect the divergence to be similar. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I can ask a question to Zane. So, in your talk, you were talking about how the metallic TMJ implants was affecting the plans. I was just wondering, I might have missed it. What type of plans were you testing that on? Were they IMRT VMAT plans, or were they just normal step and shoot type plans? Like, what was the complexity of the plan that you were testing the doses?
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So, let me understand your question. Are you talking about that? Is there any experimental study of this kind of experiment or scenario when there is a patient that has an implant and it has a tumor as well? So, not specifically, since the number of patients of this kind are very rare. If we consider that it is a true scenario patient, like once the patient has been some traumatic or some TMJ surgery that has an implant, and then after that, for 5, 6, 10 years, it has like a tumor as well. So, there are some number of patients that has been reported in the US and in the Italy as well. The number of patients are there, but if there are single patient or 10 patient, we have to do something for that. Initially, this is the first time that such kind of study has been performed. And on the next phase, since this is our research project as well at when I was in my graduate MS medical physics program. So this was our research project as well. On the next phase, what we are going to do at that time, what we were planned to do is to simulate a dummy patient, like a dummy patient on a linen couch, and to make a metallic implant over there. So, what will be the case there? So, it is in the coming phases, and we are working on it. So, probably, I hope that it will, inshallah, soon will be proceeding. No such kind of study has been performed yet experimentally. So all of study has been performed. This was a simulation-based study, a case study.
Yeah. And before too many people leave, I will have this slide up. So for the people in the audience, if you would like to present in an RD session, you can scan this QR code and submit any abstract that you've submitted before, and we'll be considering it for future RD sessions. Yes, Laszlo.
Oh, hey guys. Thanks for the talks. They were all really interesting. I have one question for Sajad and then a couple for Gabrielle. So the question for Sajad is, so going back to this pitch question that Finn was asking about. So you're increasing the pitch at the different layers. Why not just shift the stack at a different depth and just increase the number of fibers?
So you're saying just shift the stack,
Yeah.
like in which direction?
So you're going to shift, like you're going to have a larger plate, right? Or a larger set of detectors at a different depth, right? To match the
Yeah.
divergence.
Mm-hmm.
So shift it, let's say you shift it to the right such that you match the edge of the beam at that layer or at that depth.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add another couple of detectors on the other side to match the divergence on that side too.
So like increase the number of fibers in the second.
Yeah.
Okay, but you see, like the way I'm reconstructing it is actually like forming a matrix. Like suppose say 81, so I have 81 fibers and 10 angles. So the matrix is of 81 fiber times 10 angles.
Mhm.
So there is a uniformity while I'm feeding it to the algorithm. But if I'm increasing the number of fibers, so I will not have the same information with the same number of fibers, actually.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
for reconstruction, I need for the uniformity so that I can scale it accordingly. But if there is the number of fiber is different, then it won't be possible for me to fed into that algorithm. But yeah, that's
Nice.
a nice suggestion, though I can look into it also.
Okay.
But yeah.
I see. And then just another question regarding this. So like if you're using this PDD scaling, right? And presumably, like I'm guessing that you're using a standard like 10 by 10 PDD for that 6x beam.
Mm.
Or do you take into account any like beam hardening effects when you're going to like smaller field sizes?
Not
And
yet.
any
Yeah,
effects like
I'm just
softening and all that? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I haven't taken into account the beam hardening yet, but I'm just using the 10 by 10 field size and
Mhm.
just scoring accordingly with the on the phantom with
Okay.
the layer depth. Yes.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for that. And then questions for, do we still have time to ask
Yeah,
a few questions for
all
Gabrielle?
good. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, thanks. So Gabrielle, for this diffusion problem, like, do you know if there's any, like, let's say, kind of like a deformable registration to your first scan or your first readout to account for diffusion?
So it's actually I guess the biggest problem with Freaky gels is diffusion compared to
Hmm.
like other gels like polymer LCV, which are very stable for like months at a time. But
Hmm.
for when it comes to Freaky, as long as you scan your like post irradiation scan like about 30 to 40 minutes
Yeah.
after irradiation, the diffusion like effect only becomes very prominent after 2 hours. So
Hmm.
as long as you scan within like that 30-minute, 40-minute time window post irradiation, you shouldn't be like too worried about that diffusion effect. But
Okay.
as I mentioned, the Xylenol orange helps with the diffusion effect. So we've noticed that like the diffusion rate is faster for like FXO gel formulations that had like a lower concentration of XO. So th those are so we can like slightly adjust the concentrations of XO so to slow down the diffusion effects. But as long as we like scan it like 30 minutes, 40 minutes post irradiation, it tends to be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, let's say that you can't get to the MR to read this out fast enough because, I don't know, you're in a clinical setting and someone's using the MRI to make actual scans and you have to
Yeah.
read it out, at
Yeah.
midnight or something. Like, you know, is there a way that you could, but I guess, yeah, never mind, because then you wouldn't have the initial reading to deform too.
Yeah.
Um, okay.
So, yeah, so but then yeah,
Yeah.
like that's why I usually do my experiments like in the evening where we like don't have any patients because we want to like make sure that like we're scanning within like the 30-40 minute timeline and like with MR acquisition it usually takes us about like 10 minutes to scan them. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. And then the other question I had was about that liver saber
Yeah.
slide that you had. So is FXO water equivalent at all concentrations?
Yes, because it's more of the gelatin that's giving us the tissue, like the Z effective atomic number that's like
Yeah.
the same as the tissue. And you like because gelatin already has like that similar effective atomic number, the entire like FXO gel is considered to be tissue equivalent.
Okay, so then how come that you have different mean doses predicted in that isodose line for the different, is the assay like different concentration levels? I thought that's what it was.
It's so depending on the concentrations of the FXO gel is affects the dose sensitivity. So it's
Hmm.
just like how much like dose is required to like get a response from the gel. But like the gel itself is tissue equivalent.
Okay, so then your planned dose, like why is your planned dose different at the different concentration levels? Are you taking like a TPS calculated on your,
You mean like for the sulfuric, because one I had like the 65 molar at like a different dose, and then the 100
yeah,
millimolar.
yeah.
That was because for the 65 millimolar sulfuric acid concentrations,
Mhm.
in optical CT readouts, the gel gets saturated after like 5 gray. So like
Mhm.
we ended up just scaling down the liver SBRT plan.
Uh,
But then for
okay,
100 millimolar, it doesn't have that kind of problem with optical CT readouts. So we were just able to use a prescription dose of 10 gray.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience? If there are no more questions, I will thank again all of our three speakers for the session and for the great talks. And I'll just jump in to promote our next sessions from the COM Student Council. So we have in June our next COM Carrier Catalyst on Treatment Planning Workshop 2, Internal RT, Nuclear Medicine and Brachytherapy. And then we have a session for Research and Discovery series in July on low energy therapy diagnosis. So thank you everyone for being here, and thank you again, Gabrielle, Sajad, and Zain for presenting.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting. Thank you.